Everyone, welcome this week to episode 522,662 of SDRescue at our global headquarters. And we are here once again with Grayson Fulbright, direct from Vietnam. Grayson, we're happy to have you with us. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's super rainy over here, overseas, but I'm really excited to go through this email because today we're going to be talking about value exchanges and what it really means when you're prospecting to not only offer value to the prospect, but how to position it in a way to where you can also kind of get reciprocated and get the value that you need to move a deal forward.
Yeah,
Before we get started, I just want to say make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be doing these weekly sessions every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you do have any emails or any messaging that you want to send, or if you know anybody who might have something, send it our way. We'd love to review it live on the show or even have you join us.
yeah, fantastic. I'm actually really excited about this email. I love that you use the words value exchange. I think that there's a lot of people, I can actually imagine the sales meeting or like the day that someone got their first response from this and shared it with the call floor, and I bet everyone was jumping up and down excited about this email. And we're going to give you a couple reasons on why the concept I think is jump up and down worthy, but where we think they fell short and where they could do better. So I'm going to jump right into the email here. And all right, so here's the email that I received. Hey Austin, I saw that you were from this location, and I'd assume you are a Panthers fan. That's and I'll just tell everyone because it's on my LinkedIn profile, from North Carolina. So it's the Carolina Panthers, the NFL team, the American football team for those who are outside of the United States. The Panthers play the Falcons this weekend. Falcons are in Atlanta. What about a friendly wager? If the Panthers win, I'll send you a gift. Let me know if you have a favorite drink / common place to eat, etc. If the Falcons win, we have a 10-minute conversation about your sales team. Even as a Falcons fan, no, this is a long shot. Do we have a deal? Okay, so let's scroll down. We'll go to the color code here, and I'm going to give you my honest feedback for this email. So, first off, congrats. Glad to have something that isn't, like this. Boop. Just wanted to bring this to the top of your inbox. So props to you, prospecting person, because let me tell you, I get like 3 of those a day. Just so the people out there understand. And I'm not even a heavy, like our company's an emerging enterprise. It's not even like a Fortune 2000 or like, our revenue isn't over 100 million. I bet those guys get like 12. Hey, just bringing this to the top of your inbox. So if you're doing that, throw that out. But so props to this person, because this was one of their follow-up emails. I think it was the 3rd or maybe the 4th, probably 3rd. Because this person did send hey, just bring this to the top of your inbox. This was like the follow-up to that, so props. I'm glad you found something else to write. Things that I liked. All right. And now I'm not a huge NFL fan, but I did play football in high school, and I enjoy the sport. I don't watch it, but I do enjoy the sport. And not a Carolina Panthers fan, but that's okay. I do love a good wager. Who doesn't? I love a good wager. It's so fun. You never know if you're going to win or lose. And so I think that there's a lot of good creative merits in this. Like the concept of like making a wager, making prospecting to be fun. I think we do that a lot as salespeople. So especially if you're selling to other salespeople, you know that they're like, as a prospect, they're aware that you're prospecting, right? There's a level of awareness of the environment that each of you find yourselves, and that they find, that their teams find themselves. They understand the game a little bit, so you can make this a little more of a game. So I do appreciate that level of awareness with the email. Where I think it falls flat is I just think it was a little, and Grayson, I'm sure you'll talk about this, but it was just a little low. I thought it was either a little lazy or a little like you could have done this so much better. It's a good concept that isn't quite there. Like this is a very raw idea, and it's either lazy or it's either too lazy or too generic. And maybe the generic part is because it's lazy, but I have a feeling it's because it's a templated email in a sequence inside a piece of sales technology. So that's where I think this really falls flat. And we'll discuss more about that.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points there, and I do have to call out that it's great that they are using some form of personalization. Not only is it good for email deliverability, because spam filters really look nowadays for how similar or how templated each email goes out. If they're really, really similar and you're sending large volumes, that's a red flag. And so just that one variable right there, the location that they're from, can do wonders in terms of maintaining email deliverability. And then, like you said, right, it's not just a general old sales email to where you automatically know that they're just pitching it. It at the very least says, hey, I've done some research on you. I know at least where you're from. So I have to give them props on that. I think the entire idea of a wager is really interesting. I think it's creative for certain industries. I think it can work. The only caveat is you have to be careful how much time and effort and money is involved in that wager. So if it's kind of lower deal values, you really can't go too far and you're limited in what you can offer. But for larger deals, and we don't disclose the brands that we review for these emails, but this brand is a pretty large, well-known, fast-growing software brand. And so I imagine that the reason why they reached out to you, Austin, is because they think you're worth something, and they have the budget to send you a gift, and they have the budget to have a rep put that effort in. And so the wager idea and the wager concept can be really useful if it's done with the right context and if it's done in a relevant way. I think to kind of big picture view the three areas of feedback I'd give for this email. One, which we can get to a little deeper later, but the intro, I think it was a little lazy, and I think there are some things that you can do to improve that. Two is the actual relevance of the wager. So like if you're gonna say, hey, want to make a deal or want to make a bet, like you want to make sure it's aligned with the persona and the types of buyers you're targeting. And if you think about this, if you break this email down, he's targeting somebody who obviously leads a sales team and makes decisions for a sales team, but that has nothing to do with whether or not someone is a sports fan. And so you're kind of like you're almost drawing yourself out of relevance and seeming like more salesy, because you're coming off it like, oh, like they'll obviously like sports, right? And if they don't, like, why would they read this email? I think you could have used something much different that would have actually tied in with why you're talking to them, instead of, distracting them, which I think can happen if you have too many words and are talking about too many things. In this case, if someone wasn't a sports fan, I'm sure this would be a very confusing email. And then the third piece is the actual value itself and what you're exchanging. I think the way that this email kind of positioned it is a little bit, I think, biased towards the buyer wanting to just say no, because essentially he's saying, hey, like, I'll send you a gift if this person wins, and if this person wins, I get something, and you have to give me your time. And in a buyer-seller context, that's not something anyone would want to agree to. Instead, I would have tied value to both parts and just made it focused on like the fun piece. Because instead of saying, hey, like if my team wins and your team loses, you don't get a gift, why not just give the gift and offer something else interesting because their team won? I think you don't want to create the appearance of the buyer losing. To wrap back around and kind of recap my thoughts on the intro, I just want to say that, yes, it's good that it's not a standard, templated, I'm just touching base in the pretext. But you want to make sure that the first few words in your email are actually going to spark interest and get someone to say, ooh, what is this? And I think in this case, yes, it's personalized, but it is dead on the mark cliche for a salesperson and super easy to find. I think any buyer who has a level of sophistication dealing with salespeople, they're going to see that and be like, okay, they put some sort of template together and they found my location and they plopped it into email automation. I think if you're going to use an intro, make sure that it's actually going to catch attention for the right reasons, rather than saying like, good job, you know where I'm located, pass.
Yeah, so for me, when I read this email, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt and say that they did go and tailor it a little bit. The problem with it, and I think the point you're making, is that they didn't make it obvious that they did. I would have said something like to the effect of like, hey, Austin, I see you from Raleigh, North Carolina area, or even says, hey, your LinkedIn profile says Raleigh, North Carolina area. I'm actually in, well, I mean, they're in the Atlanta Falcons. So he said, I'm actually in the Atlanta Falcons area and we play each other on Sunday, right? I have a wager for you. I mean, just put if you word the sentence to where, and that probably wasn't a very good, if I actually typed that out and looked at it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I could have put that in a template too. But like the odds that you sent a scheduled mass message all centered around the Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons football game coming up. Like I received this email, I think on Monday or Tuesday before the game. The odds that you have done that for thousands of people, very low, right? Unless you did take like all of your North Carolina ops, plop them in there and say, okay, we're, and maybe that's what you do. Maybe this is a hack. This might be the hack of the century for all of you out there, is group your leads geographically based on your city's football schedule and then automate around each game each week. Week 1, you're hitting all your Green Bay leads. And I don't even know if the Falcons play Green Bay. Like that's literally how out of the NFL I am. All of you Dallas guys, you're getting hit week 2, baby, and week 3 and week 4. Oh, bye week. What do we do? Oh, I'll just send a bumping this to the top of your inbox email. Anyway, so just leave no doubt. Like I at the end of that, after I read it, I was like, they still could have put that in a template form. The other thing that struck me was, it doesn't even matter. I'm not a huge sports guy, like watcher of sports, but I did play this sport and I'm familiar with it, the NFL and, that stuff. And look, I fit the persona, right? Middle-aged, male, in sales. I mean, I bet if you took a survey of that persona, it's going to be like 80. And this is an assumption. I haven't tested this, but there's going to be a high percentage of people who at least are like, yes, I watch the NFL sometimes, maybe. So I think I fit that persona, but at the same time, like, you can disarm that, right? You could have put a wager on the Masters and say, hey, Austin, I don't watch golf, and I'm guessing you don't either. But let's make but because we don't watch golf, let's make this a fun wager, because you probably don't care. If McIlroy takes it by Saturday or whatever, I don't even know what you would do for golf, right? My wife plays golf, but that's it. I play with her sometimes and she beats me. But I mean, you could disarm your unawareness. You could make it so that, you could take a sport or even another interest. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but the competitive knitting competition is coming up on Tuesday. And I've never watched it, but I have a feeling that the new up-and-comer Cheryl Stevens is going to take it this year. If Cheryl finishes in the top 5, you meet with me. If she doesn't, I'll send you something valuable. That I think to your point was another thing is, hey, what are you giving? Because really the wager gets you to read and like be curious about the email, but the stakes are what get me to reply and say yes. And I think that's a little bit where this fell flat, is the stakes are so vague. It doesn't feel like a bet, right? If I'm betting with my buddy's like $500, this happens. And I'm like, I'll take that bet, or whatever. 500 is a little high. I'm not that high roller yet, but it's going to be something that we like, or like, hey, you have to wear this silly outfit or whatever, right? It's something that is relevant. So remember this, if you're going to do a wager email, make those steaks juicy. We like juicy steaks here. I don't know about you. I eat my steak medium rare, but rare.
Yeah, I think you made a really great point there, that you can go either direction really with the wager in terms of its relevance, but don't weigh into the assumption that they're going to be down with it and that they're going to be interested in it if you're not sure. Because I feel like in this email, it kind of has the overarching assumption that the person that they're sending to knows about American football. They're like, you know who the Panthers are, you know who the Falcons are, you even know as a Falcons fan that it's a long shot, right? It's like all these kind of like buried assumptions that like it almost is saying like, I'm forcing you to know what football is. But you made a good point, Austin, that like if you're gonna make it about something that's irrelevant, that's totally fine. But be a little jesty about it. Don't have it almost like talking like they're expecting you to also be a football buff and you're just going to be able to like pull stats out about different players or different games or whatever. Like, no, be jesty about it, because honestly, as a seller, unless you've specifically identified in your research that so and so is a football or soccer fan, like you have no idea if they're interested in this. So why would you act like they would be? I think you make a really great point that like it could be about anything. You made me laugh when you said the knitting competition, because I would honestly probably open that email. If someone reached out to me and said, Grayson, the knitting competition of the like the millennia is coming up, and like I think this person's gonna win, like I don't care if you're serious or not. I'm gonna laugh at that. I'm gonna open. I'm like, all right, like let me see what you got. I think that's a really good call out. That really, when it comes to like offering some sort of wager or bet to a prospect to capture their attention. One, it's about what's really surrounding it. Is it something that's super serious and complicated and sophisticated, or is it something that's easy and laid back and they can control? And then two, what is the actual like value? Like, what are you getting by participating in the wager? Because I think in this scenario, it's probably super easy for people to like auto reply yes, because you got a 50-50 chance of getting a gift, and then just never respond back if the Falcons win. Like what really is the cost of that? And so I think it's
low risk.
Make the value more interactive and make the value something that like is really going to make them want to follow through on it, because that's the whole point of doing prospecting. It's not just to get the conversation, but to take it somewhere and to create something out of that instance.
What I should have done, and looking back, because shout out to any sales technology vendors out there. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to plug myself. But I, like right now, I want to collect sales tech swag. I don't know why. It's just like an obsession I have right now. And I'm not talking about collecting it like I want to buy it off eBay. Like I want to collect. I want to have a story behind each piece. And how I got it, and you know what I mean. I've taken an interest in collecting, and particularly things that are not super expensive or in demand. And so sales tech swag, I think, is one of those items. I could be wrong, but I think that was part of the thing. Is it said, I'll send you a gift. Let me know if you have a drink, place to eat, blah blah blah. And I was like, dude, if you would have said, hey, I'm going to send you some swag from our software company, it might not even be sales tech for me, right? It could be any software company. Like I want swag. And stuff. Like my brother-in-law who works at Microsoft gets some freaking really cool stuff. So I know that companies have the goods, and I just the story behind each piece is going to be how it landed in my collection, right? And so to be able to tell the story, hey, I got this piece, this shirt, this desktop thing, this water bottle, I got it because I want to bet with a sales guy over email. Like that's a pretty cool story. So anyway, just make sure the offer, the stakes are meaty. Like, I mean, you've got to have, like, that's what's going to get me to reply. Actually, one of the reasons I didn't reply was I was like, yeah, I don't really want a gift card. Just like Outreach.io already sent me a gift card earlier this year or something. So that was just one of the steps in their email sequence was like, hey,
gift carded out.
yeah, no, I mean, they did. That was just like a step in the sequence was, here's a gift card. Which is a step. I mean, that's a viable step. I mean, if we're, you know what I mean, but that's not a wager stake, so it's outside of what we're talking here. Let's get into the rewrite. I'm starting to monologue. All right, Grayson, you want to read it? I just monologued.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Austin. Here's a friendly wager that likely ends with me sending you a gift. I did some research on the sales team you lead and compared company, which is your company, to similar companies that have increased the percent of reps consistently hitting quota this year with our brand. The wager. A, if your company reps are already crushing quota without issues, I'll send you a gift card to your favorite drinking or eating place. B, if quota attainment is a challenge, I'll show you some actionable ways to improve rep performance with our brand in a personalized demo for company. You'll still get the gift in exchange for your time. Are you A or B? In the meantime, let me know which eating or drinking place you prefer for the gift card.
Nice. All right, so I had to put on my distinguished glasses so that I look like a person that would give good advice. First of all, the preview line, right? So here's a friendly wager that likely ends with me sending you a gift. All right, if I read that, I'm immediately opening the email. Why? Because I'm curious. I'm immediately curious, right? One of the things, so for those of you who aren't regular viewers and are popping on a little late, I mean, we are on like our 500,000th episode. So, Grayson is really, really good at a couple of things that, there's some patterns. One thing, like just reviewing these with Grayson is like finding out how many dumb assumptions we put in our emails. We put a lot, and some of them like are really obvious, and others are not so. But this one right here, like the other thing he does is he's really good at inciting curiosity in the mind of the reader, right? So this first line, because that's all you're really going to see, is that here's a friendly wager that likely ends with me sending you a gift. If I get an email, no matter what the subject line is, it could be like the subject line could be ASDFGHJKL, like literally just mash the keyboard. That's what it is. If I see one, I'm gonna have to test that one. If I see that as the preview line, I'm gonna open that email, 100%, just because I'm like, oh, I want a gift, and wager. I'm like, ooh, wagers with gifts. Click. All right, did some research on the sales team. Right. So again, this is another way that Grayson busts assumptions. Is he always makes it about a generalization about companies like you. He never says we help. It's never we serve companies like yours. It's say, hey, I did some research and compared you with some similar companies that have had these results. Because what that does is the reader then, as a reader, as I'm reading this, I go, oh wow, I'm like those companies. You don't tell the prospect what you can do for them. You lead the prospect to tell themselves. And assumptions, unfortunately, do the opposite. They repel prospects. And your wager is more interesting. I like how B, like it's still like, hey, look, if quota attainment is a challenge, which it likely is for sales, it's likely that the entire sales team is not hitting quota, right? Your wager is conditional. It's not just like, hey, if you lose, you have to meet with me. You don't trap the prospect in there. You disarm it. It's like, hey, if you win, I'll give you the gift card. I'll hook you up. You can enjoy lunch on me. And then but hey, if this actually, if at all the conversation would be relevant and I win, we should meet about it. So even in victory, you're gracious in victory. Love it. Okay. I'm done with that. But I really like how improved this is, how much, and this is just one of the many ways that you could like this type of wager concept. I know people at home are going to be watching and say, oh, I would write it this way, or I'd write it that way. The wager concept could be written so many ways. This is just a really good way to write it, I think, just because of the disarming and the lack of assumptions that it has, and the curiosity that gets piqued.
Yeah. And I think the biggest mistake that I think the person made when they wrote their email is not leading with the fact that it's a wager. I think they might have included it in the subject line, which we don't really emphasize subject lines since you can just write them, right? But I'd say like you need to lead with the theme of your email. Like what is the overall topic you're talking about? What is the angle you're going with? Make that known ASAP. I think kind of going back to the old email, he had some value in there, but how many opens did he miss because people read the subject line and then just the words like, I saw you were from location. Like people aren't clicking and saying, oh, there's a wager in that email, or like, oh, there's some value for me in that email. They're just reading it and saying like, do I have the time? Like, is
awesome
this worth
point.
it? How does this email compare to like the 5 that are right next to it when I'm looking in the inbox? So it's like, if you're going to come with a theme and have this kind of like unique, 1-2 punch, you need to lead with it. That's why I put it in the intro. And I wanted to, I wanted to maximize the number of opens that I get. And like you said, to do that, I try to incite curiosity by bringing the juice in early. And if you'll notice, the wager that I created, they get a gift both ways. But I added a little illusion of risk by saying that likely.
I didn't even do that. Look at that. You still get the gift in exchange for your time. Look at you.
It's kind of a lie, but it's a lie for good reasons.
Dude,
it's
the
like
forecast calls for rain in Vietnam. Look at him. He's giving away everything.
So moving on from that, I think if you're going to use the wager concept in prospecting, yes, you can go the route that we had discussed earlier, which is kind of, don't worry about it being relevant. Just be jesty, try to get at the emotion of the prospect, try to catch their attention. That's one route to do it. And like Austin said, there are many different ways that you can go about this. My personal philosophy on this is, if you're going to use the wager concept, try your best to tie it around to that persona you're targeting and the situations that you help handle for those companies. And so that's why I prefaced it by saying like, hey, like before we get started on the wager, I did research on you guys. I compared it to some people that are getting these awesome future vision states by using our tool. So it's like before I even bring them the wager, I'm doing what Austin often calls like framing or priming. I'm trying to prime them like to understand the value of the wager. So it's like before they even understand what they're getting and what needs to be decided, they already know that my brand has helped companies similar to theirs increase the number of reps hitting quota, which, as you've said and as the stats say, is a universal challenge. And that's why I kind of made the wager that way, because my bet is based on me pretending to be this seller. My bet is that a ton of companies are really going to resonate with A. And so I organized the wager almost to kind of like qualify a specific stage that my buyers would be in. So like if they answer A, or sorry, I got it mixed up. I meant B is the more likely one. But anyway, if they answer with B and they are actually having trouble with attaining quota, then perfect. Like you already know whether they get on a conversation or not, whether they receive the gift or not. If they respond to this and say B, like they're much more valuable and much more ready to get hunted than somebody who says like, oh no, we're fine, we've already crushed quota. And I think going to the heart of the wager, which is the value, you made a good point to try to disarm the complexity or the risk behind it when you're looking at the wager. And I tried my best to basically make it sound like it's like, hey, like if you're this way, awesome, I'm going to send you a gift for your time. But if you're not this way, I can show you how to solve that. And here's a gift. So I'm not trying to frame it as a wager as in like you win, I lose, I win, you lose. I'm trying to frame the wager almost as if it's for me only. Like, hey, I've done some research on you. I'm willing to send you a gift to learn if you're A or B, is essentially how I'm framing it. So it's not about making the prospect wrong. I think the last point to make is that in the earlier email, I feel like they didn't do enough to explain really what their brand does and what's the value of having a conversation with them. And so that's why when I said, like, I didn't say like, if quota attainment is a challenge, I'll hop on a call with you for 5 to 10 minutes, because that's framing it as taking your time away and you lose it. Instead, I'm offering it and framing it as a benefit. Like I'm saying, I'll show you some ways to improve rep performance. If you have trouble with this, I can teach you how to improve this. And it's almost showing it as like an option of value for them. Like if you look at options in financial markets, it's something that the buyer can exercise at any time and say, hey, you know what? Actually, I got this email 2 months ago. Can I still have the gift? Like B is the answer now. I think that could totally happen if you frame the value of this wager correctly.
You look like the kind of guy that would have like a mountain of puts in their account. It's just like trading and selling, buying options all the time. Just like, hey, I've got $10 million in puts that expire next day. About to cash those in. So yeah, I mean, just to summarize, I think there's a couple of things in contrast. So here's the number one thing about your email. It's not desperate, right? So I think part of the reason that in the original email, they didn't have a whole lot of like company information, it's because the first email was a massive company vomit summary. So just to give some context in the sequence. And then the second email was, hey, just wanted to bring this vomit back up to back up to the top of your inbox. I was like, oh, thanks. Love me some reminders of vomit. And then the third email was like, hey, okay, you didn't respond to my vomit or my vomit reminder. So let's bet on sports. Right? That's desperate. Guys, let's not be desperate. Grayson's email is a really good example of like how to stay professional about the wager. There's a ton of different ways you could structure wagers. It, like I said, could be knitting, could be horses. You could bet on whether or not Halley's Comet shows up, but I think we can calculate whether it will or not. So that might not be a good wager. My point is that like the big thing for me was like, Grayson's email isn't desperate. It's a huge takeaway. The other thing is that it like with Grayson's email, it's really hard to it'd be really hard to you know, make sure that it's not a template. Like if you're going to go and do the extra mile and actually do the research on where I'm from, like make sure you know that without a doubt you wrote this email. Those were my biggest takeaways. You do a great job structuring the wager and making it a win-win for the buyer. I didn't even think of that, where like, oh yeah, you have incorrectly framed this as like, I win, you lose. But if that guy would have said, hey, we'll make the wager a win-win, you know, find a way to make it so that I win either way, I'll probably respond. You know, your call to action is really good. Are you A or B? By the way, let me know where you want your gift card from, right? Like you're going to get a response. I mean, there's 3 avenues of response. Either you just reply A, reply B, or you reply with where you want the gift card from. So I think we're at 12 o'clock. That was awesome. Happy to do this every single week. We do this every single week, everyone. Mondays, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to take off my detective glasses. And remember, follow, like, subscribe, SD Revolution, LinkedIn, connect with Grayson and I. We'd love to chat on LinkedIn. We're actually super active though in answering questions and discussing things a lot like this email inside of the SD Revolution Slack channel. So join the Slack channel, get in there, and we're happy. You know, if you want to discuss your email or other emails you receive or whatever more privately, that's a great place to do it. If you do want your email on the show, send it our way, or you can even join us. There's always a third frame to my right or left on this Zoom meeting. Yeah, we'll be happy to talk to you. You can join us for our 600,000th show. We'd be really happy to have you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you to everyone who joined us. We'll see you next week. And like Austin said, you know, we've been reviewing emails that him and I receive, just real life. But if you yourself have some emails that you want to anonymize and improved, please send them our way.
Thanks, everybody.